In the early morning hours of December 30th, 2025, Spencer and Monique Tepe were shot and killed inside their home on North 4th Street in Columbus, Ohio. They were weeks away from celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary. Friends and family described their life together as full and happy, built on love, community, and a future they were actively planning for themselves and their 2 beloved young children. That morning, multiple 911 calls were made, all tied to the same address, 1411 North 4th Street. First, a welfare check, then reports of concern, and eventually a call that changed everything and turned the lives of so many upside down. Inside the home, investigators found no weapon, no clear signs of forced entry, and very few immediate answers. What happened inside that house? Who is responsible for it? And why would anyone want to hurt these 2 people who it seems had never made an enemy in their lives?
What you can't explain, is coming back again. I can see it now, I can see it now. What you can't explain, coming back again.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another coffee and crime time. So I know I've been away for a while. If anybody was watching my community page, you know I've been very sick. I'm still not, 100%, but I am good enough to sit down today and talk to you about what happened to Spencer and Monique, because it's really affected me. It's really kind of gotten under my skin, and you'll come to see, as I did, that none of this makes sense. It's all tragic. It's all completely pointless. All murders are pointless, but when you look at this couple, when you look at this family, you just cannot wrap your head around it. The case that we're talking about today, the deaths of Spencer and Monique Tepe, it is developing currently. When I first started researching it, when I first started writing the script, the person who was responsible had not been identified, and now they have identified someone, and usually that would make things more clear. Usually it would kind of wrap things up, or at least give you an idea of what happened and why. But in fact, I think, from my opinion and my standpoint, the person they've identified as being responsible has made this even more confusing and even more senseless. We have a lot to talk about. There's still so much unknown. I have questions, and I honestly can't wait to get your take on it and see maybe if you're kind of deciphering something from the facts and the evidence we have so far that I'm missing, because I just can't make heads or tails of it. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN, and this is one of those tools that I genuinely think more people should be using, especially if you care about your privacy, your security, or just having more control over your digital life. We do so much online now. Banking, researching, streaming, emailing, shopping. In fact, the majority of people are shopping online, and most people don't really stop to think about how exposed that can make them. Your data, your location, even your habits can be tracked in ways you never explicitly agreed to, and that's why I use Surfshark VPN. When it's on, Surfshark encrypts your internet traffic, which helps you protect things like passwords, private messages, sensitive information, anything on your devices, especially if you're on public Wi-Fi, like in airports, hotels, coffee shops. One thing I really appreciate is how easy it is to use, because you know me, I'm not great with technology. Surfshark automatically connects you to the fastest server, and one subscription lets you use it on an unlimited number of devices. This is my favorite part, because we all have a lot of devices we want protected. We've got our computers, we've got our laptops, we've got our tablets, our phones, smart TVs. Surfshark is going to cover all of that for you, plus even your kids' gaming systems, the Xboxes, the PS5s, the things that they're using to connect with other people online, your mom's computer and phone, because our moms are falling for scams every day. They also have features that go beyond just a basic VPN, things like Clean Web, which helps block malicious websites and phishing attempts, Surfshark Alert, which notifies you if your personal information shows up in leaked databases, and a strict no logs policy, meaning Surfshark will never track or store your browsing data. And there are also some really practical everyday benefits that people don't always think about when they think about a VPN. Surfshark gives you access to entertainment and content that can otherwise be blocked depending on where you live or where you're traveling. It's going to get around that geo-blocking. So, for instance, I always use this example, but I love college basketball, and they always used to block the Syracuse games on Watch ESPN. I don't know why, maybe because I was close to Syracuse and they wanted me to go to the games. I don't know why, but they blocked them. And so all I had to do was make it look like I was in a different location, and then I could watch them on Watch ESPN. You can connect to servers in different countries and access streaming libraries that aren't normally available in your region, like Japan or the UK if you like British television and you don't want to wait for it to come to the United States, or vice versa. If you're outside the United States and you want to access Netflix in the United States, you can do that, which is honestly great if you travel or if you just want more options. Surfshark now covers 100 countries, which actually makes them the only VPN to reach that level of global coverage. And if you ever run into an issue, they have 24/7 live customer support plus a 30-day money-back guarantee so you can try it risk-free. We talk a lot about scams, identity theft, digital exploitation, and a VPN isn't about hiding something. It's about protecting yourself. It's about not making things easier for people who want to take advantage of you online. So if you want to protect your privacy and take more control over your online activity, go to surfshark.com/stephanieharlowe and use code stephanieharlowe at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. I know there's a lot of VPNs out there to choose from. I've used many of them. Surfshark, hands down, is the best one. So check it out. Again, that's surfshark.com/stephanieharlowe and use code stephanieharlowe to get 4 months for free. The link and the code are down below. Take advantage of it and protect yourself online. Thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Now let's dive in. I'm going to start by introducing you to Spencer and Monique quickly, and then after we've gone through the timeline and what we know so far, I'm going to talk to you more about who they were because it's very important. It's very important to me, to everyone they knew, and hopefully to you. So Spencer Tepe worked as a dentist at Athens Dental Depot in Athens, Ohio, and he lived with his wife Monique on North 4th Street in Columbus, Ohio. And this address is very important because it's not only where the Tepes lived and where they died, but it's also where they said their vows to each other in a small and intimate wedding ceremony that took place on January 30th, 2021.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. So everyone,
Larry does not.
I'd like to present to you Mr. and Mrs. Tepe.
What you just saw was the actual wedding of Spencer and Monique, filmed by Rob Misla, who was married to Monique's sister and who has since become the family spokesperson of sorts. And I spoke to Rob and I asked for permission to use this footage because I wanted you to see Spencer and Monique as they were. I wanted you to witness the love they had for each other and the love that everyone they knew felt for them. You will hear Rob and others talk about this love, the kind of bond and dynamic that Spencer and Monique shared that really isn't seen a lot these days. It's very rare, but it's a completely different thing to see it for yourself and hear in their own words how they felt about each other and how important they were to each other.
I feel so lucky to be up here with you today. You've grown to become my best friend, and together we're surrounded by friends and family who are fortunate to be able to say the same. We're so lucky. Our support system is immense, and you embracing Larry, my crazy group of friends, and my loud family like you have means the world. I vow to support you, to believe in you, and to encourage you. I vow to provide for you. I vow to never stop loving you and to always keep working on us. And lastly, I vow to do my best to always keep making you laugh because your smile is my favorite thing. I love you.
Spencer, what can I say? From day one, I knew you were something special. I had quite a journey to get to you. Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you. Throughout all of this, I knew that God was guiding me to my person, and that when I met him, it would be the most magical thing ever. And boy, is that an understatement. I finally found my lobster, and it honestly couldn't be a person with a more beautiful heart. I will love you forever, and I'm so lucky to be Mrs. Tepe.
And you can see shots of the house that Spencer and Monique shared all throughout this wedding video. Spencer actually purchased this house in 2020, and then Monique moved in there with him. But the ceremony happened in the house. The wedding ceremony happened in the house. The reception happened in the house. There are shots of the couple and the wedding guests celebrating inside and outside of that house. And I think it's safe to say this home was very important to the Tepe family. They felt safe and comfortable there. It seems they made it the centerpiece of their lives, not only where they got married and where they lived, but where they would constantly host gatherings full of friends and family, where they would raise their 2 children. And that's who Spencer and Monique were. They were people who cared about people, people who opened their home and their hearts to anyone who needed a friend.
I've been very fortunate to stay close to them and to get them to get to know them really well. They've quite literally given me food, shelter, clothing, and drink. And I'm so happy to have you guys in my life.
Rob Misla said that Spencer and Monique were the center of a huge community of friends and family. But not only that, they were the glue that held everyone together. They were also loving and devoted parents to 2 children, very young children, a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. 2 young and innocent children who have lost parents, who I'm sure would have loved them forever and who would have brought so much fun and laughter into their lives, because you could tell that Spencer and Monique were fun and they were funny and they loved to laugh and they loved to smile and they just loved to enjoy life. So let's move to the morning of December 30th, 2025, when the Columbus Police Department received several calls from concerned people who were worried about Spencer and Monique. As I mentioned, Spencer worked as a dentist at Athens Dental Depot, but he didn't just work there. He was very important to the whole establishment. It appeared that he ran the practice for the owner, Dr. Mark Valrose, who spent some time out of state. So it was Dr. Valrose who placed the first call to 911 around 9 a.m. on December 30th because Spencer had not shown up for work. And this was so unlike him that his coworkers were immediately concerned. You can tell when somebody's definitely always on time, definitely always consistent, definitely doesn't have ADHD or organizational problems, because it really wasn't long after 9 a.m. that Dr. Valrose was calling 911 because everybody at the dental office was worried about Spencer. And I don't know if he was supposed to start earlier than 9, because 9 is usually when these offices open. And their website says that they're open Mondays 9 to 5 and Tuesday through Thursday 8 to 4, Friday 8 to 3, or by appointment. So this happened on a Tuesday morning. So obviously Spencer was supposed to be in by 8 a.m. And like I said, when someone's always at work at the time they're supposed to be there, when they're consistently there every single day, and then one day they don't show up and they're not answering their phone, people are going to get concerned. If it was me, my coworkers probably wouldn't have been concerned until 11 or noon the next day. You know, they wouldn't be able to get a hold of me because my phone's always on Do Not Disturb and I'm just consistently late, but not Spencer Tepe. So these coworkers, they called Dr. Valrose, who was in Florida at that time, and then he called the police. Now, we are going to hear several 911 calls throughout this video. If you're like me, they're going to make you mad because we're going to come to find that it appears the 911 dispatchers in Columbus, Ohio need to either find a new line of work or go back to day 1 of training, because this is some of the worst and most infuriating behavior I have seen from 911 dispatchers in my history of following true crime and covering true crime. And I'm quick to point out when a 911 dispatcher is not handling things in the proper way. But I'm also usually understanding about it when it's not atrocious. I think that a lot of these 911 calls were just atrocious. So here's the first one. Dr. Valrose calling 911 because Spencer's coworkers can't get a hold of him and he didn't show up to work.
I would like to ask for a wellness check on an individual at their home. Well, I'm currently in the state of Florida. I'm on vacation, but this individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family.
He didn't show up to work?
Correct.
Okay. Does he have medical problems or?
No, and he's been reliable, and we cannot get in touch with him, his wife, his family, anybody that lives in that house.
Okay. So
There's
you're
two
in
kids in the
Florida.
home. I'm in Florida. I own the business. I was informed by my employees that he was not at work, and he runs the office. Have you guys received anything else, like calls about him or like a car accident or anything like that?
No, sometimes people just don't show up to work. I mean, maybe he's sick. I don't know.
You can hear Dr. Mark Valrose state that the reason he's worried is because Spencer didn't show up to work. And the dispatcher doesn't seem impressed. And once again, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to give her a little bit of a pass because I understand that it's actually more common for people these days to be a bit unreliable and maybe miss work here and there, show up late from time to time. It's December 30th. It's right after Christmas. It's right before New Year's. It's kind of the time of the year, the week of the year where people sort of don't want to work, and a lot of people don't work, right? So I'm going to give her a little bit of a pass, but it also seems like she's trying to sort of shift the call off. She's saying well, you're in Florida. And he's like, yeah, I'm in Florida, but I own the practice and he's running it. And both Dr. Valrose and Spencer's coworkers are very insistent. Spencer's not like this. He never missed work without calling. He was always punctual, always on time. His patients were very, very important to him. So if he's got appointments that day, he doesn't want to keep anybody waiting. And I also understand that when these dispatchers talk to so many people a day, something that seems small, like a guy being a little late for work, might feel unimportant. Like I said, it's around 9 a.m., so she might be thinking, it's a little early to be worried. She's certainly treating it like it's not important. She's saying, okay, he's not at work. Does he have medical problems? What's going on here? Sometimes people just don't go to work. And she says this, sometimes people just don't go to work after Valrose is asking her, well, has anything else been reported, on your end, right? In Columbus, Ohio, are there car accidents? Have there been emergencies, anything like that? And she immediately says, no, sometimes people just don't show up to work. I feel like she's saying that before she even has a chance to check on that, to even see if something has happened and maybe there was a car accident with unidentified victims. But either way, Dr. Mark Valrose is trying to express that everyone is worried in this circumstance because not only can they not get a hold of Spencer, but they can't reach his wife either. But you can also tell that he's thinking in his head, it might be nothing. We may be overreacting. I don't want to make too big of a deal about this right now. I just kind of want to know, is there something else going on, a car accident, emergency, something that happened with the police in Columbus, Ohio, that could explain why Spencer's not here, why we can't reach his wife, Monique, either, and why, we are very concerned because we know they have two young children, a year-old and a 4-year-old, in that house, and nobody can reach anybody in that house, and it's very unlike these people to not be in touch and to be irresponsible in this way. And like I said, this 911 dispatcher's response is, sometimes people just don't show up to work. Yeah, but they're telling you that Spencer doesn't do that. He never does that. So either way, the 911 dispatcher, whether or not she thinks it's important, has no choice but to actually send out some police officers to perform a wellness check at the Tepe home, which reportedly happened around 9:15 a.m. the wellness check. So as Dr. Mark Valros was calling 911, one of Spencer's coworkers at the office in Athens, he got in his car, left the dental office to drive to Spencer's house to check on things himself. Now, keep in mind, the dental office was located in Athens, Ohio, and the Tepes lived in Columbus, Ohio. And according to Google Maps, these two locations were 75 miles apart, and it would take about an hour and 10 minutes to drive from the office to the house, probably more at that time of the morning when traffic would be heavier. And this is probably another reason why Dr. Valros is concerned that there could be an accident, because every single day to get to work, Spencer is getting up, if he's going to be there at 8 or 9, and he's driving like an hour and a half to get to work, and that's a long commute. So yes, the longer you're in a car and the longer further you have to drive, the more likely it is you could get into a car accident. So they're worried that maybe something happened to Spencer while he was driving to work. So the coworker ended up getting to 1411 North 4th Street a little after 10 a.m. And when he got there, he called the police again.
Okay, 1411.
1411, yep.
Okay, what's the emergency there? Police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the
We already
wellness.
had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in. At this point, I don't know if I need to break the door in or just get in the house or what. So.
Okay, were you out there when the police was out there?
I wasn't. I just got here about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll send them back out to you.
Okay, so we have this 911 dispatcher, and this dispatcher sounds agitated. I think we can all agree. She's like, we've already gotten a call. We were already there. We knocked on the front door and the back door multiple times. No one answered. And he's saying, no, I wasn't there when the police got there. I've only been here for about 5 minutes. As it turns out, as smug as she sounds, the Columbus police did go to a house to check on the welfare of Spencer Tepe, just not the right house.
Unit 43.
And in that footage I just showed you, you can see there's a police officer going to do a welfare check at the Tepe home. He's whistling away, casually strolling around, having a nice morning stroll, checking on things at a house that was located on Summit Street, which is several streets away from the Tepe home. It's about a quarter of a mile or a 1-minute drive away, to be more specific. And I actually have a screenshot of where each house was located, and you can see they're pretty close together, but it doesn't matter because this was the wrong house. Now, according to an article in the Columbus Dispatch, the officer has the address written on a piece of paper in his hand. We can't see what address he has written on that paper, which leads us to the question of, was he given the wrong address by dispatch, or did he just go to the wrong address by mistake or human error, or because he wasn't taking it that seriously and wasn't that concerned? Now, given the fact that he was so close to the Tepe home, I'm going to say he just accidentally went to the wrong address because he was in the right area. And I would hope that the dispatcher got the address correct. But the police keep saying that the Tepes were killed long before the welfare check happened. And I get it. I get it. You're trying to defend yourself. I get it that you couldn't have stopped the crime from happening because it happened long before the welfare check. But as you heard on the 911 call, Spencer's coworker said he could hear kids in the house. So if things had been done correctly, if the welfare check had happened at the right address, police could have been on the scene by 9:15 a.m. And they too could have heard kids in the house. And maybe when no one answered the door, just maybe they would have been able to get inside. and help those kids. Those 2 kids woke up that morning. We have no idea what time they woke up. They're young kids, probably early, probably like 6, 7, maybe even earlier. I don't know. But I remember having kids that were 1 and 4, and they never slept in past 8. So these kids woke up very early that morning, not knowing where their parents were, not knowing why no one was answering their initial calls and cries. And I think we can agree that they shouldn't have had to wait for their father's coworker to drive all the way from Athens and call the police again to have their trauma and confusion come closer to being ended. If the police had gone to the correct address at 9:15 and they'd heard the kids, hopefully they could have gone in and done something and, helped the kids and let them know at least that someone was there. But in my opinion, those 2 children could have been crying and screaming for several hours before Spencer's coworker got there. And that's just way too long for children to be in that position, waking up, knowing that every other morning when they wake up and they call their parents, Spencer and Monique would come in and pick them up and get them breakfast and they'd have a nice day together. But this morning that's not happening and they don't know why and they're afraid and they're confused and they're sad. And it's believed that these 2 children did not witness anything. I've seen some reports that they were closed into the bedroom with the family's golden doodle. Being the ages of 1 and 4, they may have both still been in cribs and not been able to get out of the cribs to kind of explore and find out for themselves what was happening. I hope. I don't know for sure. But still. I wish that the police had gone to the correct address, and I wish that their means of defense now wasn't like, well, we couldn't have stopped the crime. Well, you had 2 little kids in that house, terrified, crying, looking for their parents, and you would have been there an hour and a half earlier had you gone to the right address. So I don't know what the second 911 dispatcher ended up doing, if she's the one that sent police to that address. But yeah, like I said, she seems annoyed. She's like, we've already gotten calls about this. We're on it. The Columbus police, we never mess up or go to the wrong address. We've already been to that residence. She's so smug. And now to come to find out, they weren't at the right house. This is why being patient, being kind, and understanding that even though you've gotten 100 calls that day and 1,000 calls that week that turned to be nothing, not every call is going to be like that, and that's your job to be there for when the call is actually an emergency and actually something that needs law enforcement attention, and understanding that the people on the other end of the line are scared and they're nervous and they just want some reassurance and they want the police to come and do their jobs. And then we have a third 911 call, which came in just a few minutes after the last one.
1411 North 4th.
Okay, 1411 North 4th. We've got several calls on that. What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? Stay on the line.
Oh my God.
Columbus Division of Fire, what is the address of your emergency?
1411 North 4th.
Okay, 1411?
Yeah.
All right, the house or apartment?
House.
All right, tell me exactly what's going on there.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead.
Okay.
There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything?
Yeah.
If I was asked, I would say that this third 911 dispatcher is the same woman as the second 911 dispatcher. They sound the same. And she's like, what's changed since the last time you people annoyed me and I had to do my job of picking up a phone and sending the police to places? What's changed, she says. And he's like, there's a body. And then she's like, there's a body? Okay, so apparently you have to call 911 and tell them you see a dead body before they take it seriously and they stop making you feel bad and guilty for calling a public service, the police, which your tax dollars pay for and which are there to protect and serve the community. But anyways, what is the most heart-wrenching? And I just listened to this call again so I could react in a more raw way, because I've listened to these calls a million times, but I keep having to not listen to this call because you can hear in the background the sound of kids screaming and crying. And it's very hard to hear. It's very hard to hear. And the caller says that he can see Spencer dead near his bed, and there's blood. Now, both Spencer and his wife, Monique, were found in their bedroom with gunshot wounds. It seemed that Spencer was either half on the bed and half on the floor or lying on the floor, and he had been shot multiple times while Monique was shot once in the chest. Police said there were no obvious signs of forced entry, but a murder-suicide was ruled out as law enforcement did not locate a weapon at the scene, although they did collect some 9mm shells. The two children and the family golden doodle were unharmed. Like I said, it's unlikely that the children witnessed anything based on the timing. Police believe the murders occurred, which is between 2 and 5 a.m. on December 30th. So the very early morning hours of Tuesday, December 30th. And very recently, we've actually gotten a more accurate time, which is 3:52 a.m. Apparently, that's when police think this happened. Now, where are they getting this very accurate time from? I think they have more information. I know they have more information and more evidence, more specific evidence than they have shared. But many people have asked the question, how could this person who called 911, how could he see Spencer dead in his bedroom if the bedroom's located on the second floor, as police have stated? This person says in the 911 call, he can't get any closer. And this led some people to believe that he was maybe like looking through a window, but I don't really see, unless you had a ladder, how you could look into the second floor window. I don't think it's possible. I think this person was inside the house. And when he said to the 911 dispatcher, I can't get any closer, it was like an emotional, I can't get any closer. Like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. I can't go in any further to the room. I can't get any closer to this. This is absolutely shocking. So once again, I believe he was in the house based on how loudly you can hear the kids crying. It does sound like he's in the house, maybe in the hallway, and they're in a different room with the door closed. But if that's the case, which I think it is, how did he get in? So I'm wondering if the door was actually unlocked, which is why police found no signs of forced entry. There are some reports just from like people commenting on YouTube videos and online that this guy broke in or he found a way in, which is possible. But if he broke in or found a way in, would that have been the same entry point that the killer used? Either way, like I said, I believe he was actually in the house at the time that he made this call. And honestly, good for him. Good for him. When you've already called 911 a few times that morning and they've told you they've been to the house and knocked on the door and no one's answering and there's no one in there, and you go to the house and you hear kids crying and no one's answering, and you know these people and you know they would never sit there and let their kids cry if they were okay. Yeah, you're not going to wait for 911 to make their way over there again or go to the wrong house again. You're going to try to get inside and see if you can help, see if you can offer assistance. And I believe that that's what this person did. Now, there are a couple of other 911 calls that are very odd that came in to dispatch before this crime. And those calls are also connected to the Tepe home, or at least the area of the Tepe home. So 11 days before the murders on December 19th, 2025, a woman called 911 and reported that someone was banging on her door and trying to get in.
What's the emergency?
Somebody's knocking on my door. They're trying to get in. They're banging on my door.
Okay, someone's banging and knocking. Do you know who this is?
No.
Do you have a description of them?
No, I can't see anything upstairs.
Have you asked them what they want or if they need something?
No.
So this woman calling 911 ended up being a neighbor of Spencer and Monique Tepe's. She lived just up the street from them. They said it was like a 3-minute walk up the street from where the Tepes live. And police records say the call came in at 2:33 a.m., but that the problem left at 2:44 a.m. And honestly, I don't think they sent anybody out there to check on it because either the woman stayed on the phone until the problem, which I assume to be the person knocking and banging on her door and trying to get in, left and stopped doing that, or because she called back and said that they had left. But this dispatcher is just not handling this properly. She's like, do you know who it is? And it's like, I don't think she knows who it is. She's saying someone's knocking at my door. Someone's banging at my door. Someone's trying to get in. She's not like, this is my ex-boyfriend or my, violent stepfather or the guy who runs the 7-Eleven down the street. She's not saying that. She's like, someone is trying to get in. Someone's banging at my door. Someone is here at 2:30 in the morning. And the woman clearly sounds scared. And she's even, you can tell she's trying to be quiet. She's trying to be quiet because she doesn't want to hear the person on the other side of the door who's banging and trying to get in. She doesn't want them to hear her calling 911. And the dispatcher's like, well, did you ask them what they wanted? What? Someone you don't know is banging on your door and trying to get into your house at 2:30 a.m. I think whatever it is they wanted is probably nefarious. And maybe it's better that you shouldn't let them know you're home and you should be quiet and just call 911 to help you so that police can come and figure out what the hell's going on with that person outside the house who's trying to get in. What is this dispatcher suggesting this woman does? Open the door and just ask what they want. Did you ask what they want? What could they possibly want at this hour? Yes, in my opinion, the dispatcher should have just sent an officer out to help and check on things, make sure everything was okay, and then been done with it. What are these stupid questions we're asking? Just absolutely ridiculous. And then 8 months before the murders, on April 15th, 2025, a call to 911 pinged as coming from the Tepe address. That call initially happened at 2:45 a.m. The caller hung up before speaking to a dispatcher, and so then the dispatcher called the number back. Now, this guy, the 911 dispatcher in this call, he was actually really nice and kind and patient. So he's got it down there. He's got the mannerisms and the, personableness. Is that a word? Personableness. He's personable. He's got that down. But in my opinion, he still did not do his job.
Hi, this is 911. We just got a hang-up call. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're crying. Do you need police, paramedics, or anything?
No, I'm okay. I promise. I'm just emotional. I'm okay. I don't need nothing.
Well, can I ask what had you call 911 in the first place? Like, were you having an argument with somebody?
Me and my man got into it, but I'm okay. I promise.
Did anything ever get physical?
No.
You guys were just arguing, nobody hit each other?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I have the information here. I can go ahead and tell the officers to cancel hitting over to your address there at 1411 North 4th Street.
Yes.
If anything changes, call us back.
Okay.
All right,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
I'm not trained in being an emergency dispatcher, but in my opinion, all the signs are pointing to this being a domestic disturbance call. She called 911 and then she hung up before she could get anybody on the line. And then when 911 called her back, this woman was clearly in distress, which the dispatcher recognized because he even says, it sounds like you've been crying. She says she's emotional. She had a fight with her man. And then when he asked her if the fight got physical, the woman calling, or that did call 911, she pauses for a long time before answering. That was what they call a pregnant pause, right? There's something in that pause. And she says no, but you can hear when she answers no, she's crying even more. She's even more upset. Now, the dispatcher then asked this woman if she would like to cancel the 911 call, as in, like, we won't send anybody out. He actually asked her this. Do you want us to just cancel this call? This was where he messed up. Her life could have been in danger. She could have called 911 and then hung up because her man, the man who she'd been fighting with, entered the room that she was in or walked up to her. And when 911 called back, he could have been standing right next to her, threatening her to act like it was no big deal and to tell them nothing was wrong so that he could get her off the phone with 911. I mean, right? Like, why would you ask a woman who's calling 911 at 2:30 in the morning, saying she got in a fight with her man, and that she's clearly emotional, she's clearly upset, she clearly thought initially there was some reason to call 911. That's not a mistake. You don't butt dial 911. Why would you ask her, like, do you just want us to cancel the call? You know, like, you're on your own. And if the person who was threatening her or being violent with her was listening, like, let's say she had it on speakerphone, he would be instructing her, like, yeah, cancel it, cancel it. Of course he doesn't want the police to show up. That dispatcher should have not given her a choice. He should have sent a unit to check on her, but instead they canceled it, okay? That bothers me. And I still would like to know what happened with that woman, because who was this person that was calling 911 from the Tepe home at 2:45 on a Tuesday morning, months before Spencer and Monique would be murdered in their home? Now, the family have said, without a doubt, this is not Monique Tepe's voice. And when Rob Misla appeared on the Surviving the Survivor podcast, he said that Spencer and Monique had a party that night, the night the 911 call came in, and he said the caller was one of the partygoers. He said the multiple people he talked to who were at the party remembered a woman who had a bit of a freak out that night. She might have been having some mental health issues, and she called the cops from the home using her cell phone. So not long after this statement, Rob talked to Law and Crime, and he said, quote, "The party that I was talking about was years ago. From my understanding from Monique's sister, their neighbors and one of her friends, a friend of Monique's, may have had too much to drink or taken an edible and had a mental breakdown. If the date of the 911 call is April 2025, I don't know. I know it was not Monique's voice," end quote. And I think this is when Rob Misla started becoming suspicious to people online, you know, the online sleuths, the people who follow true crime and talk about it in the Facebook groups and on Reddit and in the comments under YouTube videos. They thought that that was suspicious, that you would say, oh, that's no big deal. We know who that woman was. She was at a party. And then you kind of walk back that statement and you say, oh, actually, that party was years ago. So if the date of this call actually happened in April of 2025, that couldn't have been who I was thinking of, but it was definitely not Monique. So they started to be suspicious of Rob, which I did not understand because, once again, Rob was married to Monique's sister. And not only that, he shot Spencer and Monique's wedding. If you go on Rob's Facebook or even Spencer's Facebook, you can see they've been very good friends for a long time. And I'm not saying that nothing like that's ever happened before, but at that point, I think it was a little bit too early to be going to Spencer and Monique's wedding video on YouTube that Rob had posted years ago and telling him in the comments, you know, we're suspicious of you, Rob. We think it was you. Why? That was insane, but that is what happened. Okay, so I think if I'm gonna kind of throw out some potential theories right now, I think that April 2025 911 call was probably somebody who was walking down the street and who was passing the Tepe home when she called 911. I don't think she was inside the house. I don't think she had anything to do with the Tepe family. And I don't think that 911 call had anything to do with Spencer and Monique. So like I said, I would be very interested to know what happened to that woman. Is she okay? Is she okay, police? I don't know, because you guys didn't send a unit to check on her. Now, the call that happened 11 days before the murders, the one where the woman who lived down the street from Spencer and Monique was saying she heard someone banging on her door, trying to get in at like 2:30 in the morning, that may still be connected. And I'm going to explain why I think it might be connected later on in this video. Okay, then there was this surveillance video released by the police, and this footage shows a person walking in the alley behind the Tepe house on the night they were killed, or like on the early morning hours that they were killed. And in the window of time that police believe the attack happened between 2 and 5 a.m. So this picture that I'm going to put up, it's going to show you where the alley is located in regards to the Tepe home. It's behind their house and behind their fenced-in backyard and their garage, and police have not released the exact time that this footage was captured. They just said that it was between 2 and 5, but it was a very cold night. It is the middle of the night, so why would someone be out in weather like that at that hour, not really even dressed for the weather, I would say. It looks like they're kind of just wearing pants and maybe like a hoodie, and they're walking with their head down, which I think, the police, because they released that footage, maybe thought that this person was intentionally trying to shield their face from surveillance cameras. I did some looking around and I found that there are a couple of bars around that area. So if it was closer to 2, then maybe this person could have just been walking home or back to their car after leaving the bar. But if it was closer to 3 or 4 or 5 a.m., then the figure seen on surveillance would certainly be more suspicious. So let's now take a look at the Tepe home and see where the access points can be found and figure out where and how their attacker could have entered, because this is something that I do not have answers to, and I'd be very interested to know, because once again, it doesn't make any sense. So on the front of the house, there are 2 sets of doors, and I've marked both of them with yellow stars on this photo. You have the front door to the left. This is the door that you see Spencer and Monique standing in front of in their wedding video. And then to the right of the front door, there's a set of French doors. Now, either of these doors could have been left unlocked. I don't think that they would have been. I just don't really see Spencer and Monique with their 2 young children in their home in this area, which wasn't a super safe area where their house was located. It was known to have some crime and things in the area. I don't see them going to bed at night with their 2 children in the house and not making sure multiple times that the door is locked. I live in a very safe area, and I'm still up every night, 3-4 times a night, checking and making sure that the doors are locked. But you can see, I believe, in this photo of the house that the Tepes seem to have a doorbell camera. I think that's a doorbell camera. And I feel that they must have had some sort of surveillance, at least on the front of the house. So I really doubt that the intruder entered from the front. I mean, given the fact that he was spotted in the back alley, if that's the intruder, which I think it was, given the fact that he's spotted in the back alley behind the home, given the fact that the front doors all face the street, which, yeah, it's the middle of the night, but you could still have cars driving by, you could still have people walking by, you're still in full view of the neighbors if they happen to be up. So given all of that, I think it's more likely that he came in through the back of the house. So let's go to the back of the house. Once again, you can see there are 2 entry points in this photo designated by yellow stars. So we have the back door, and then we have the basement egress window. Now this appears to be a full egress window, which, if you don't know, an egress window is required by law as an emergency exit if the basement could potentially be used as a living space. So if the basement's finished, if there's enough square footage, if it's advertised as being like another bedroom down there, there needs to be an egress window that a full-grown adult would be able to fit through in case of like a fire or an emergency situation. So I asked Rob Misla if he knew whether the police had dusted both the inside and outside of this window, because what I was thinking is there's no sign of forced entry. Is it likely that this person knew the couple and they let him in that night at like 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning? Given the fact that Spencer and Monique were found in their bedroom, not super likely, because that would mean that he'd have to bring them back to the bedroom, and we'll discuss that in a second. But is it more likely that the person may have entered the house previously because they knew Spencer and Monique, and they went down to the basement and they unlocked that egress window, knowing that they were going to come back at a later time and use it to enter the home. So this is a very big security concern. I have a basement egress window that is an emergency exit. And so on my basement door leading into my kitchen from the basement, I have a lock on the outside of the basement door. And so at night, I make sure that that lock is fastened at the top of the basement door. And that means if anybody were to get into my basement at night, they would be stuck down there. And I mean, there's video games and ice cream in the refrigerator down there. There's plenty to do, books to read, but you're not going to be able to get into my house and get to me or my children. So initially, especially before we had identified somebody who was a suspect in this, I thought maybe somebody came in before, was like, oh, hey, I got to run down to the basement for something, unlocked the window, and then entered the window when they came back on the morning of December 30th. And that's why there was no signs of forced entry. And I asked Rob this, did they dust for fingerprints inside and outside the egress window? He said he didn't know if the police had done that, but he hoped they did. I still hope they do, because even knowing who the police apparently believe did this, I am still wondering, how did this person get in? Because the lack of forced entry has continued to bother me. It made me feel that either Spencer and Monique forgot to lock the door, which I don't think is really, like I said, I don't think that's really an option, or they were visited by someone they knew and then this person was let in, or as I said, someone that they knew had been let in previously, unlocked the basement window, and then returned in the early morning hours of December 30th to commit this crime. There's also a back door off the patio in the backyard that could have been a potential entry point, but the Tepes could have had doorbell camera or some sort of surveillance method back there as well. You can't really tell from the pictures because there does look to be something that could be a doorbell camera on the door, but it also looks like the locks on this house were keypad locks, meaning you'd have to type in a PIN to unlock the door and get inside. So what I could be seeing on the door could be a keypad lock and not a doorbell camera. But either way, I want to talk about the backyard for a second, because I do believe that the person who came into Spencer and Monique's house and killed them did go through the back. Like I said, he was seen in the back alleyway. And if you look at the backyard, you can tell it is fenced in. There's a patio and there's a garage that's kind of like wedged between the fence. And then behind that garage and the fence at the back of the yard, that's the alleyway. There's only one way into the yard through the fence. And that's like a gate that's sort of up by the house itself, not back by the garage. It's by the house to, if you're looking at the back of the house, it's to the left of the basement egress window. And I don't know what kind of locks that gate had on it, whether you could just, reach over and unlock it and go in, or, this person could have scaled the fence, because unless they knew how to get into the garage and then go through the garage into the backyard, onto the back patio, and then into the house, they still would have had to scale this fence in some way or possibly open the fence. Once again, I don't know what kind of security measures are on that fence, but typically you can't just open the fence into your backyard from the outside of the fence, because then you don't have much security. But the fence does not seem to be that tall. I mean, tall for me, yes, but maybe 4 or 5 feet. A grown man who's, healthy and slightly athletic could easily scale it, I think. And I believe that's how they got it. Now, how they got into the house from that backyard, that is still a question I am wondering. And that's why this crime is bothering me so much, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. And from the beginning, what happened to Spencer and Monique, it felt personal. It looked like a personal attack, not a random one. Not just somebody walking down the street and like, oh, that house looks cool, let me break into it and kill people. There were no reports of anything being stolen. There were no signs of forced entry. And Spencer was shot multiple times, which suggests overkill, while Monique was only shot once. It did also occur to me that someone could have banged on the door in the middle of the night, like we heard in that 911 call, where the woman said someone was banging on her door and trying to get in. And maybe this was just somebody who was kind of doing this in the neighborhood, seeing who would open the door and let them in so that they could get inside. Maybe someone was knocking on the door. Maybe Spencer had gone downstairs to see who it was. Maybe that person pretended they were injured and needed help, and Spencer opened the door because that's who he was. He was a kind person and he cared about people and he trusted people. And then when he opened the door to make sure this person was okay, the intruder forced their way in with a gun. But once again, Spencer and Monique were both in their bedroom when they were killed, and it seemed that they had been in bed when the attack happened. So that also didn't add up unless Spencer had been marched at gunpoint back to his bedroom where he and Monique were then shot. But why would a stranger do that? Why would a stranger do that? Why would a stranger go in there and kill them and not take anything? And that led me back to the belief that this attack was personal and targeted, not a crime of opportunity, not a burglary gone wrong. This was planned specifically to take the lives of Spencer and Monique. And that brings us to this past Saturday, January 10th, when 39-year-old Michael David McKee was arrested and charged with the double murders of Spencer and Monique Tepe. And you might be wondering, who is Michael McKee? Well, Michael McKee had once been married to Monique Tepe. But this happened quite a while ago. Right, many years ago that they were married. So according to records, Monique and Michael McKee were married on August 22nd, 2015. They then separated the following year in March of 2016, like early on in 2016. And then Monique filed for divorce, claiming they were incompatible and they were living separately at that time. Divorce proceedings began in May of 2017, and the divorce was finalized in June of 2017. So this seemed to be a very quick and very clean divorce. It did not seem contentious. The couple had no children. The marriage didn't last very long, and the break should have been clean with both parties moving on with their lives. Now police are saying Michael McKee, who hasn't been married to Monique in almost a decade, drove to the Tepe home, entered the home, and killed them both. Now, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it is hard to put yourself in the mind of somebody who would do something like this, much less somebody who had once been married to Monique, somebody who had once loved her and shared a life with her, however short that life that they shared together was. Now, apparently both Monique and Michael lived in Ohio until a month before they were married when they moved to Roanoke, Virginia in September of 2015. There's actually reports that Michael McKee had moved to Virginia a month prior and he had lived in his car for that month until he, got a house, and then Monique moved from Ohio to Virginia to be with him. But McKee had graduated from Ohio State University. Now, this is a college both Monique and Spencer also attended. And McKee graduated from Ohio State University's College of Medicine in 2014. Yes, he was going to college to be a doctor, not just a doctor, a vascular surgeon. So it looked like Michael McKee had moved to Virginia because he was completing a general surgery residency program at Caroline Roanoke Memorial Hospital. And this isn't confirmed, so to speak, but sources claim that Monique was unhappy. She was unhappy living in Virginia. She was unhappy with Michael McKee. She was a very social, extroverted person, and because she worked, I believe it was for Allstate Insurance Company that she worked for in Ohio, and then she was working remotely from home with the same company when she went to Virginia, and she just kind of missed, integrating with other people, the social aspect of going to work and having work friends and going out for drinks after with friends and just having people over, because I guess Michael was very introverted and kind of liked to spend more time alone and didn't really want to go out and didn't really want to have people over. And once again, we go back to Spencer and Monique, and you can see these are very extroverted. People. They love life. They love having people around. They love having drinks and, just enjoying life and having a good time with the people who are close to them. And obviously, Monique is better matched with someone like Spencer rather than someone like Michael, who, yes, he was working hard to become a surgeon. He probably worked a lot. He probably spent a lot of time studying and brushing up on everything, probably went to bed early, got up early, things like that. And their personalities just weren't meshing. They weren't compatible. So like I said, there's reports that Monique started voicing her discontent with the marriage and where she lived in January of 2016. She was like, I miss my friends. I miss my family. I want to come home. And so some people that she was close to, her family, they rented a U-Haul. They drove to Virginia. They packed Monique and all her stuff up. And then they drove back to Ohio. And so Monique basically left Michael McKee. And like I said, this could not be accurate, but there is a few sources who say this happened while Michael McKee was at work. So maybe kind of a surprise thing, although I'm sure that Monique had expressed that she was not happy with where she was living. Maybe there was issues in the marriage. Maybe they were having relationship issues. I don't know. None of that has been said or proven yet, which also brings us to the question of what the hell did Michael McKee do this for? Because it doesn't seem like he gave her any trouble, right? Getting through the divorce and getting a divorce. So what it looks like is January through April of 2016, Monique was talking to her friends and family at home, like, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. I'm not happy, whatever. They go and pick her up probably in the spring of 2016. And 2016, that's the year that it is stated Michael McKee and Monique separated and began living apart, right? Because now she's back in Ohio and he's still in Virginia. And then the following year, Monique filed for divorce, at which time she had a lawyer and her husband, Michael, represented himself. Now, at the time the divorce was filed, Monique and Michael were making about the same amount per year. And I know you're like, well, how could she? She's like, doing insurance and he's a doctor. Well, he wasn't a doctor yet. He was completing his residency. And yeah, I'll just say that between the two of them, or not between the two of them, but they were each making, between $35,000 to $40,000 a year. So they were pretty much making the same amount of money. They didn't have a ton of marital property. It was decided that neither of them would pay spousal support. Michael McKee did not contest the divorce at all. They didn't have kids. Really, there was nothing that suggested, at least in the legal documents, that Michael McKee was unhappy about this or was trying to control Monique or keep her there or not let her leave. However, if the reports are true that Monique left Michael while he was at work and she had people come and get her and pack up all her stuff while he was at work, in my opinion, that does suggest that she was a little concerned about how he would react and a little concerned that he might try to stop her from leaving. So I'm just going to say that and leave that there. So in the divorce paperwork, you can see there's a standard mutual temporary restraining order. And that sounds bad, but it's not really. It's not an allegation of abuse. It's not a criminal restraining order. It's pretty common in divorces, actually. And in many states, when a divorce is filed, the court automatically issues an MTRO, and that applies to both spouses equally from the moment the case begins. And basically, its purpose is just to preserve the status quo while the divorce is pending. It prevents both parties from harassing each other, messing with each other's personal assets or property. Like, you can't drain bank accounts. You can't sell your husband's car. You can't, move money around. It stops them from changing insurance or beneficiaries. Yeah, they're just that kind of stuff. It's basically an order that's saying, while we sort this out, nobody make any big moves or act rashly. Everything needs to kind of stay as it is so we can figure out how to divide everything properly and fairly. The paperwork also says the case was terminated and referred to a private judge, which I guess also isn't super uncommon, and it's not a huge like, oh, this is a red flag. This is what's going on. There's something bad happening. I mean, it's not as common as the mutual restraining order, but it still happens often, and it's not always a sign of, the marriage is bad or one of the people in the marriage is violent. It basically means that the divorce was removed from the public court docket, and then a private judge was hired to hear the case. So once again, it seems like both Monique and Michael agreed to this. There was not a fight about it. And you'll often see that people choose a private judge who's usually like retired or something, but still able to hear cases. And so they'll hire a private judge. They'll pay money to have this judge hear their divorce case. And this happens for a few different reasons. And the main one is usually privacy, to limit public exposure, to keep sensitive financial or personal details more contained. You see this a lot with people who are high profile, like celebrities. You'll see this in sometimes high conflict divorces where, maybe there's sensitive information that they don't want to get out. Sometimes and often you'll see this when one or both parties is concerned about their reputation, but that's not the only reason it happens. A lot of times it's done to speed up the process because a private judge can hear the case faster, whereas the public court system takes forever. And the private judge can also schedule hearings around each person's availability. So this is most likely why the divorce was finalized within just a few months and it wasn't dragged out for a year or more. But why was the private judge hired? Why did they want to make it happen so quickly? I don't know. Maybe Monique and Michael wanted to get the matter settled promptly because they lived in different states and Michael was busy becoming a doctor and maybe he couldn't, make time for all these hearings. Maybe Monique was having issues with her legal attachment, her marriage to Michael, and she wanted their connection severed as soon as possible. Maybe there were issues in the relationship that will be disclosed one day. They're just not in the divorce document. Monique does not allege infidelity. Monique does not allege abuse of any kind. Neither does Michael. Neither one contested it. Neither one wanted to drag it out. They seem to be pretty fair in the splitting up of the very few assets that they shared together. In fact, there's really no red flags in this divorce, which is why none of it makes any sense. And I heard a few people online who had gotten a hold of the divorce documents say, oh, Monique paid for her own engagement ring. She paid for her own wedding ring. I got these documents too, and I looked through that because I was like, not that that's a huge red flag, like, oh, you had to pay for your own engagement ring or your own wedding ring, so your ex-husband definitely killed you. But I was just like, is that true? That kind of sucks. Let me see if that's true. It does not at all look to me like that is true. It's under Michael McKee's asset portion, and it shows how much he paid for the engagement ring and the wedding ring, and he says, I paid. He wrote, I paid, and you can tell it's a completely different handwriting than Monique's. So I don't know if I'm seeing something wrong or if other people were incorrect, but either way, there's really nothing in these divorce documents that says in, 7 or 8 years, this man is going to track down his ex-wife and brutally murder her and her husband while their 2 young children sleep in the other room. I don't understand. It makes it make less sense, at least based on what we know, right? And I know that there's more. And we also know that Michael McKee eventually became a vascular surgeon. And at the time of his arrest, he was living in Chicago and working as a vascular surgeon in the Rockford, Illinois area. I did some digging into Michael McKee's background, and I noticed a few things. One, Michael McKee really doesn't have much of a criminal background outside of a few traffic violations in 2017 and 2018. There was also a driving a vehicle while intoxicating and basically improperly leaving his vehicle on the road. And those 2 things happened on the same date. So I believe he was probably drinking and driving. I think this happened in 2014 or 2015, around that time. He would have still been kind of in college, younger. This was before he married Monique. So yeah, there was that too, but nothing criminal, nothing like, oh, he's had issues with violence or he's had domestic disturbance calls. At least as far as I could tell, there was nothing. So 2, Michael McKee moved around quite a bit. So it seems like he lived and grew up in Zanesville, Ohio. He was there when he was young. Zanesville is just east of Columbus. And according to USA Today, McKee was kind of just really doing well in school and in life. He was already making headlines in his local paper from the time he was a first grader in 1994. He received an honorable mention in a contest for kids posters. Like, kids are supposed to design posters and then they put them in for a contest and it gets voted on. And Michael McKee designed a poster featuring a smiling bell and a slogan that read, "Let freedom ring, vote." Very patriotic. When he was 13, he made it into the paper again, this time for getting a rating of excellent at a state science day held at Ohio Wesleyan University. When he was 14, Michael McKee won the city spelling bee with the word siege, telling the reporter, quote, "I was a little nervous right up until the end." End quote. At Zanesville Bishop Rosecrans High School, he ranked 5th in his senior class. He was a National Merit Scholar, Biology Student of the Year, and a member of the National Honor Society. McKee also placed in the top 25 in Ohio University's American History contest, and he spent 3 years playing for the school's varsity football team. While at Ohio State University, McKee made the honor roll and obtained his medical license in Ohio at the age of 28 in 2014. He would go on to obtain a medical license in Virginia, California, Maryland, Nevada, and Illinois. In 2009, it looked like he was in Columbus, Ohio. So that's where he was when I think he met and married Monique. They got married in Columbus. And in 2013, he was in Westerville, Ohio. He briefly lived in Erie, Colorado in 2014. We see him back in Columbus in 2015. And then we have him in Roanoke, Virginia, where he purchased a home in September of 2015, the month after he and Monique were married. Now, Monique's name was never on this mortgage of this home. This was purchased by Michael McKee himself. And that's a little interesting because it was purchased after they got married. So it would have been considered marital property, I believe, and he only put his name on it. So does that say something that he's expecting Monique to leave the state she was born in, where her friends and family are, and move to Virginia and live in a house that doesn't have her name on it? Or maybe they just wanted to make it easier. Maybe her credit wasn't as good as his, so it made more sense for the interest rate to just put his name on the mortgage. I don't know. But either way, according to property records, that house in Roanoke was sold to someone else at the end of November 2020. And then from there, Michael McKee lived in Los Angeles, California. He lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, until 2024, when it appears he moved to Chicago, Illinois. And this is where he was arrested when law enforcement tracked his vehicle through neighborhood surveillance near and around the Tepe home on December 30th, 2025. So police claim that McKee's car, which they have confirmed he was in possession of, was seen arriving to the Tepe home just before the murders occurred, and it left the area shortly after. That's the evidence they're telling us they have on him right now. That's what we know, that he was married to Monique before, like 7-8 years ago, and that his car was spotted in the area of this neighborhood in Ohio, even though he lives in Chicago, Illinois. Okay, so a neighbor of McKee's told WLS-TV that McKee didn't seem like somebody who would do something like this. And she's like, we were standing around barbecuing, talking about what a nice day it was. He's a really nice guy. I mean, the serial killers talk about what a nice day it is outside, BTK. They had a whole life, and he was like leading the church, and he was the best family guy ever, according to the outside perspective. So that doesn't really mean anything that this guy could stand there with you and be like, we're having barbecue by the pool right now, and it's a very nice day out. But to be completely honest with you, Michael McKee really doesn't seem like the type of person who would do this, based on what we know about him, at least. None of it makes sense. It's very confusing. What's going on here? Had Michael McKee been so mad about Monique divorcing him that he waited almost 10 years to act out his revenge? Did something recent happen that triggered his anger? Or did he bide his time, letting Spencer and Monique intertwine their lives, fill their home with happiness, build their family with 2 children they loved more than anything in the world, so that he could strike when they were at their happiest? I will say it's interesting to me that I found some Facebook pages associated with Monique Tepe. They were in her maiden name, and it really didn't look like she had been posting on those social media pages for a long time. I think it was like 2017 or 2018, something around there, where she just stopped posting. As far as I could know, I wasn't a friend of hers. But it seems she kept a low profile when it came to social media, a low profile. Whereas Spencer, her husband, did have a Facebook page, but it's private as well. So you have to be his friend to see it. So I'm wondering, was Michael McKee kind of like watching them from afar and just getting more and more angry every time they posted a happy picture or had a success or had another child or got a promotion or something like that? Was he just seething in rage all these years? Did he see the video of the wedding that was posted on YouTube where Monique talked about, the wrong relationships and waterfalls of tears that had helped lead her to Spencer, and McKee took this personal? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Monique and Michael McKee were married for such a short time. They lived together as a man and wife very briefly, 7 months technically, before Monique left and went back to Ohio. And almost a decade has passed since then. And as far as I can tell from, just an outside perspective, it looks like Michael McKee has done well for himself. He's working in the career that he spent years going to school for. There's reports that he'd moved on and he dated other people as well. What the hell could be the motive for something like this? To kill 2 people and leave their innocent children orphaned? It doesn't really make any sense to me, and it's really bothering me. And I'm not saying that Michael McKee didn't do this. I'm saying, what the hell's wrong with him if he did? There's always going to be the understanding that if you take someone's life, there's definitely something wrong with you. And if there wasn't before, there's going to be something wrong with you after, because I don't believe that you can take a human life and not be changed irreparably by that. But usually there's more of a pressing motive that I think as humans we can sort of understand, not justify, but understand, like, oh, there was money involved. He killed her because of the life insurance, or she killed him because he was cheating and he was going to leave her for his secretary. We can see why that would happen. We're humans. We understand greed and we understand jealousy. What was wrong with him that he would wait this long to do this? Or did something happen recently that triggered him to do this? Because if Michael McKee did do this, we can assume it was out of anger. There really does not seem to be any other motive. Money, jealousy. I mean, jealousy, yeah, but this many years later, 7 years, 8 years later, you're still jealous like that? Like, what's wrong with you? There doesn't seem to be any other motive besides like revenge, anger because she left. And if you really look at it, it does seem that if Michael McKee did this, his anger was directed mainly at Spencer. Because Monique was shot once in the chest and Spencer was shot multiple times. So was Michael McKee mad at Spencer? All 3 of them went to the same college. Did they all know each other? Were they all friends? Is there something going on here? Spencer was a little bit younger than Monique and Michael McKee. Spencer was 37, Monique and Michael 39. But were they maybe all friends? Was there some betrayal or like breach of brotherhood that happened here that Michael McKee's been holding on to for this long? I don't know. The police obviously have to have other evidence besides McKee's car being in the area. They have to have DNA or fingerprints or electronic evidence like texts, internet searches, cell phone pings, something like that. They have to, and we're going to talk about how McKee's charges are going to be upgraded in a second, so they have to have something else. And we may find out exactly what that evidence is if Michael McKee decides to take this to trial. Because, once again, as we're going to find out, he's deciding to plead not guilty, I guess, according to his lawyer. So Michael McKee will be transferred from Illinois to Ohio to begin legal proceedings. His lawyer, a public defender, has already stated that McKee plans to plead not guilty. He hasn't yet been formally indicted because under Ohio law, a grand jury can't even consider a case until the person is physically present in the state. And then this past Monday, so I'm filming this on a Tuesday, this happened on Monday, Michael McKee's charges were upgraded to aggravated premeditated murder, with the Columbus Division of Police saying that detectives believe the evidence meets the elements required for the more serious charge. So aggravated premeditated. They haven't revealed what evidence supports this, elevation of the charge. But obviously they have something that suggests premeditation. Like I said, text messages, internet searches, maybe evidence that he had been driving by the house before, maybe evidence that he'd been in that area and he was watching the house before, kind of like a Brian Koberger thing. They have to have something, and I really wish I knew what it was, but I do know that in Ohio, aggravated murder carries a potential sentence of life without parole or even the death penalty. So I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, he's gonna plead not guilty. I don't know if he's going to take it all the way to trial. I kind of hope he does, because I would like to know what happened here. And Michael McKee is expected back in court on January 18th, so I will update you if we learn something new at that point. But before we go, I want to talk about Spencer and Monique because from everything I found, they seemed like amazing people who were positive influences in the lives of everyone they knew. And after the murders, Rob Misla made a statement saying, quote, "Our family is devastated by the tragic and senseless loss of Spencer and Monique. They were extraordinary people whose lives were filled with love, joy, and deep connection to others. Spencer was a devoted and proud father, a loving partner, and a friend to everyone he met. He was intelligent, warm, and endlessly welcoming. A graduate of The Ohio State University and a member of the American Dental Association, Spencer was fluent in Spanish and deeply committed to serving others. He gave back through Big Brothers Big Sisters, a huge Bengals and Buckeyes fan, and lived life with energy, laughter, and generosity. Monique was a loving, patient, joyful mother whose warmth defined her. With a background in childhood education, she brought care and intention into everything she did. She was an excellent baker, a thoughtful planner, and someone who found joy in bringing people together. Her kindness made people feel instantly at home. Together, Spencer and Monique shared a beautiful, strong, and deeply happy relationship. They loved to travel, to laugh, and to build a life rooted in love. They were proud parents of 2 beautiful children and their beloved golden doodle, and they created a home filled with warmth, happiness, and connection. We are heartbroken beyond words. While no outcome can ever undo this loss, our family is committed to seeing this tragedy fully and fairly brought to justice and to honoring Spencer and Monique by protecting the future of the children they love so deeply." End quote. Spencer and Monique also had a combined obituary, and it told us that Spencer was born on December 9th, 1988 in Cincinnati, Ohio, to Tim and Yvonne Hildebrand. Spencer received his undergraduate degree and his Doctor of Dental Surgery degree from The Ohio State University. Spencer was passionate about dentistry. Spencer also loved competing at almost anything, but his primary sports were soccer and golf. He enjoyed entertaining his family and friends. He loved speaking in Spanish, but most of all, he focused on taking care of his family. Monique was born on October 14th, 1986 in Chicago, Illinois, to her parents, Ignatius and Nerita Sabaturski. At the age of 1, she moved to Worthington, Ohio, where she was raised. Monique grew up playing soccer, was a runner, loved horses, and an avid book reader. Monique loved children and worked at the daycare while attending The Ohio State University to obtain her master's in early childhood education. Monique was a stay-at-home mom known for her bright smile, infectious laugh, caring heart, and bubbly personality. End quote. As you heard mentioned about Spencer, he had served as a Big Brother mentor for years, and he made a big impact to a lot of lives.
Spencer was a role model to many, and to one young man in particular, through his work with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio.
People have siblings and family at home that support them, but sometimes they need someone else, someone experienced, and they're there for you when you need them.
The mentorship program connects children facing adversity with mentors to ignite their potential. This testimonial video on Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio's YouTube page shows the special bond between Spencer and his mentee, Hans, from 2021.
My favorite thing about being a Big has been how I've become part of his family and he's become part of mine.
Hans, a recent Purdue University graduate, now working as an engineer. His mom, Norma, says it was an instant match.
It's like encouraging him that in a positive way, that he knew he could do it.
A mentor turned lifelong friend.
Monique eventually came into Spencer's life. And I know that you even mentioned the two of them went to your son's high school graduation party, and Spencer was excited to introduce her to your family.
Yes.
It really was like you guys were part of the family.
We were part of the family.
Jessica Rodriguez was Spencer and Hans' match support specialist, working hand in hand with them since Hans was in first grade.
I get asked a lot for success stories, and I think that this is a match that is one of the best stories out there because they went from 5 years old, first grade, all the way through high school and college.
When you're going through like hard times or when you're struggling with something, they're also there, so they can be a friend and supporter and a mentor all at the same time.
I'm really proud of him, and I'm excited to see what his future holds for him.
It's really a testament to the person he was because a lot of mentors could find an excuse to close the match. You know, getting married, getting a job, having a child, but Spencer was different.
Spencer and Monique's deaths continue to make national headlines, but for the Hernandez family, the impact is profound.
Knowing them, seeing them at their house, how friendly they are, how it's hard to believe that there will be a person that will not like them.
The Tepe Circle tells us they don't want them to be defined by their deaths, instead remembering the kind-hearted people they were, with personalities that are rare to find in this world: warm, giving, strong, and loving.
And what is your message to the person who would have such a violent reaction to this couple?
Did you have a family? It's like, why? Really?
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
There are numerous accounts of how much people loved Spencer and Monique, how they contributed nothing but happiness and positivity to everyone they knew and encountered. People who worked with them, patients who had known Spencer for years, parents who had trusted Monique with their precious children and were grateful that they had her in their lives. People who knew them both through childhood and their teenage years. And this shows Spencer and Monique were always good people with big hearts who deserved to find each other and who deserved long and happy lives that were stolen from them. This is truly tragic in every single way and from every single angle. I even just look at Spencer and Monique's wedding, how small and intimate it was. They were loved by so many, but when it came time to stand in front of people and celebrate that love, they did it in the way that I think you should. Not this big, lavish wedding with hundreds of people there, half of them you don't know, and you don't even have time to talk to everybody, and you're just constantly pictures being taken, and you have to be here and you have to be there, and it's the most stressful day ever. No, they did it with a handful of people that they cared about most in the place they cared about most, their home. And it looks like they had the best time ever. It looks like they loved each other very, very truly. And as I mentioned earlier, it's rare to find that nowadays. It is rare to find two people who are this good for each other and who seem to get just such enjoyment out of simply being in each other's presence. And I'm really sad. I didn't know them, but it makes me really sad. And speaking of things that make me really, really sad, at this time, Spencer and Monique's two children are being cared for by various family members. And apparently the 4-year-old daughter, she's been pretty quiet. She hasn't said much, especially the first few days. Rob Misla said they're trying to figure out how to tell her that she's never going to see her parents again. He said, quote, "I'm sure she's wondering when she's going to see her mommy and daddy again. It's just really hard to get into her mind," end quote. I don't think there is an easy or good or right way to tell a child that their parent, well, even one of their parents is gone, much less both. All we can hope for is that they are so young that any memory or trauma, anything they may have heard or anything they will hear as these next weeks and months go by, hopefully that will fade from their memories. And that makes me even sad, though, because I know that Spencer and Monique were amazing parents. And I know that they probably shared so many sweet and wholesome and loving memories with their children that will also sadly fade from their memories. And it just feels wrong. It feels wrong that this was stolen from all of them. Something that's more important than money, something that's more priceless than money, which is just true love and a family unit that, is there, and you trust each other and you love each other and you enjoy each other and you have fun. And that's what life's all about. And this was stolen from not only Spencer and Monique, but from their two children. And it's devastating. So I am going to link a GoFundMe in the description box. I checked with Rob to make sure this was the legitimate GoFundMe, but this GoFundMe is set up to help Spencer and Monique's children. I will be donating to it. Anybody who can or wants to right now, I know that times are tough for everyone, but anybody who can or who wants to, you can feel free to do so. And as I know more information, I will update you. But that's all I have for you right now. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Let me know if you have any theories on the questions I've posed throughout this video. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, subscribe if you haven't already, because I will, I was sick, but I'm back. I'm going to be making content again. I want to be like, I always put out content. And then if you're new to the channel, you're looking back and you're like, girl, you haven't posted in 3 weeks, but I will. I'm back. I'm better. I will be posting content. So you can subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Thank you all so much for being here. Hold your family tight. If you have a love like this, don't let it go. Kiss your kids, hug your wife, love your husband. And that is all. Thank you so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down.